It's a beautiful day in Chiefs Kingdom, except for a couple of guys who aren't going to be on the field this week. How do the Chiefs adapt? Where are they going? Matt Derrick is on location to give us the ins and the outs of all that we need to know for this Chiefs team. Let's get into it today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It is our Wednesday show midweek as we start to look ahead to what is coming for the Kansas City Chiefs. LinkedIn Jobs is our sponsor today, and they help you find the candidates you want to talk to you faster and easier. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Lot to go over here. Obviously, there's still twisting in the wind about a couple of guys and how they're going to adapt. We're going to talk to Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest here in just a second. He has a lot of insight on it. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, RGR Football, and NFL 33. Thanks for making us your first listen. This is the Locked On Network, where everything is free every day on all the platforms, so check it out. You can also check out ChiefsDigest.com, where you can get all of Matt's work for free. Matt's on the road, but this was clearly something that I think you pegged on social media when the news about Willie Gay came out, that they had to plan for a way around. And that plan took the form of keeping Jack Cochran on the roster so that they could really play with it this week, right?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense now in retrospect that the Chiefs went ahead and made that move. There was clearly some interest around the league with Cochran. People were impressed with him and what he did during the preseason, and there were some good things you heard out of Kansas City. So that was a factor as well. But definitely the Chiefs made a move early to make sure that they were able to keep him because they knew this before we did. They knew that they were going to be without Willie Gay for 4 weeks and 4 games. So the move to keep Cochran now means that the Chiefs, even without Willie Gay, will have a full complement of linebackers, and they won't need to be scrambling or doing anything with roster elevations. And it also makes sense with making the commitment, because when you bring up Cochran, you are committing to at least 3 weeks of keeping him on the 53 and 3 weeks of NFL paychecks. So now it makes total sense why the Chiefs did this.
Now, I can't speculate unless you have further information, Matt, about why there's no appeal available here, that the NFL has made a decision that isn't appealable. Wasn't sure that was a viable thing if it isn't somewhere in the CBA that I haven't read.
Well, you can appeal. It's just, whether or not you choose to. And Willie Gay and his team haven't stated a reason why they didn't want to appeal in this case. But remember, you're appealing a suspension. At this point, your appeal goes to the exact same guy who just handed it down. Roger Goodell, here's the first appeal. If you want to go through the same, process that Deshaun Watson did and you end up with an arbitrator, that's a much longer process and a different deal. And honestly, there was probably not a lot of chance that it was going to change. The NFL moves at its pace. So as far as, being 6 weeks after the resolution of Willie's case before the suspension comes down, that's a legitimate beef with the NFL's bureaucracy. Could they move faster? Absolutely. But their policy is that they don't take any action for the most part. They will do some investigation, but they don't do anything until legal proceedings in a case have concluded. So once Willie's case, finished in the legal system, that allowed the NFL to begin the final steps of its process, and they hand it down. But remember, if Willie does appeal this suspension, that delays it. So when does the appeal get heard? Most likely it would have been heard during the bye week, which means that Willie Gay, instead of resting up and trying to get away, is going to New York more than likely. They usually do these things in person rather than they can do them on Zoom. They did it the last couple of years, but the preferred process is usually in person. So now Willie Gay's going to New York to try to get his suspension reduced rather than resting up. And now there's a chance that instead of, weeks 2 through 6, he's sitting out weeks 8, 9, 10, and 11, or even 10, 12, 13, 14, later in the season. And if you bring this out, does Willie Gay want to have this 4-game suspension next year in a contract year? No. So probably for Chiefs and for Willie Gay, the best option was just to go ahead, take the punishment, and move on.
Well, I think that makes sense now that you put it in that context. And unfortunately, it's going to be tough to be without him, especially this week, as you're looking to really make sure that you can shore up your ability to get to the sidelines. He clearly is the most athletic linebacker on this roster. That will be a miss. But we have to take a look backwards at what the Chargers did, because he was the most targeted player on the defense this last ball game. And I don't think that's a coincidence. His athleticism allowed him to hold up. I consider it holding up. He did give up 13 catches on 14 targets, but it was under 100 yards, and his athleticism, I think, paid that off. Now that you know that you have to have a step down, no matter who gets on the field to play with him, how do you combat that if you're the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, it's going to be a bigger loss, I think, in a situation where you're going up against a team like the Colts that wants to run the football and establish the run first. I mean, everything that they do is going to be based off of that. So Willie Gay would be a great player to have against the Colts. But honestly, I mean, you need him every week. He's an every down linebacker for this team. And, and as the will, that's his role. I mean, he would be on the field almost all the time, even in substitution packages. He's going to be the guy that would be out there. So you'll even miss him in games when you're going up against some pass happy teams like Buffalo and Tampa Bay. So how did the Chiefs, address that? And I do think it was interesting, like you noted, about how well the Chargers did target him. And sometimes it worked because Willie Gay is an aggressive player, and he's going to, do what he did against the Chargers, which is every once in a while he'll miss a tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Now he piled up some tackles too. So I think that against the Chargers, you definitely say the good outweighed the bad. But yeah, I mean, how do teams now attack this team? And especially, with what this lineup is going to look like. I think the reaction would be that this is going to mean a lot more work for Leo Chenal, and I'm not sold on that. It may very well against the Colts because the Chiefs may end up playing a lot of 4-3 base. And if that's the case, Leo was going to be in there as the strong side Sam linebacker. But he has never prepped or played the will. I mean, that is not Leo Chenal's position. He plays Sam and Mike. So he's not going to be taking snaps from Willie Gay. The only way he's going to get more time is if they just spend more time in the base. You could leave a Sam out there, but that's not normally the way the Chiefs do that. So I would expect, Elijah Lee and Jack Cochran to probably end up, and Darius Harris too. And Darius Harris might be the biggest benefactor as well. I mean, he can play all three positions. Elijah Lee, can play all three positions. So I would expect those guys to play more, but let's see how it shakes out. But I don't think that this automatically means that Chenal is going to be the benefactor of more snaps with Willie Gay gone.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of how it could happen because it would have to be in the base. My only thought is, especially if Pittman and Pierce are both going to miss again, that is a distinct possibility as we sit here on Tuesday. We don't know their availability. If they're not there, then the Colts offense is going to be reduced to the run game, in which case you can afford to be in the base more. That's kind of how I see it too. I'm really interested to see if they're playing a two linebacker nickel, what are they doing? Is it forcing them into the three safety sets in order to have that ability to get to the sidelines? I think that's really the bigger question. We'll hopefully know some more tomorrow as we get a little bit more report. But then that's not the only thing going on here, folks. There are many other aspects of this game they have to shore up because there are other players missing. And I think it's gone under the radar a little bit to this point. But we'll talk about that when we get back. We got to set you up with our new pals from LinkedIn. As you gear up for fall, you need to find the right people to help your team and your small business fire on all the cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier for you to find the people that you want to talk to faster and for free. I'm always looking for good content creators, graphic artists, et cetera, et cetera. It makes it simple to just create a job in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs and reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. You add your job, and the purple hashtag hiring frame comes in on your LinkedIn profile, and it spreads the word to your network as well as others that you're trying to find the right people to hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. And did you know that every week 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free on linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Sometimes I like to wear the glasses just because it makes me feel better. We're back with Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com on the beat for KC. Matt, it's not just the linebacker position that has to roll here. We talked about two of the premier pass catchers for the Colts. If they are back on the field, the absence of Trent McDuffie, I think, is still a pretty big distraction. Or detraction, from the performance capability of this defense. Now, a lot of folks are very impressed with Jalen Watson, including me. I thought he was a very heady player for the time that he got. What was more intriguing to me is that he held up the whole game. He had some stops early against the Chargers that I felt really precluded to what he was going to do. So my question to you is he the natural slide that into McDuffie's spot? Does he start this week? Should he? And how do they compensate for the fact that he is still a rookie and he hasn't had as many snaps as McDuffie has?
Yeah, it's a great question, but I think that that's one thing that really impressed the Chiefs was just how well Jalen Watson handled the big opportunities and the poise with which he played. That was bigger than anything else. That to be able to handle the spotlight and not let the moment be too big for him. He did a great job with that. And honestly, going forward, I mean, he's not going to see as many, until the playoffs. He's not going to see any bigger moments than he saw against the Chargers on a Thursday night. So that's a great indication right there. I mean, yes, you are going to be missing a lot with McDuffie as far as the experience go. But the one thing Watson does give this team that, is unique is the size element. And that played a big factor, in his ability to keep up with some of these receivers and to be able to handle them. I thought even in the few opportunities that he was, he had Mike Williams. I thought he did a really nice job. And you can see how that's an advantage. I mean, a guy like Rashad Fenton, there were a few times that Fenton was just absolutely all over Mike Williams. He did everything he could. But when you're a smaller corner, you're sometimes there's just nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Whereas, Watson is a bigger guy, has got that advantage. So, yeah, I'd like to see some more of those opportunities and see how it handles. I think he'll still be the 3 guy, as far as, the rotation goes. They don't want to put too much on his plate yet. It's still going to be Snead and Fenton doing the majority of the work. I don't see that lineup changing at this point, but I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, that Jalen Watson took a big step towards earning the trust of his coaches, going all the way down from Reed, Spagnuolo, Merritt, everybody with that performance on against the Chargers.
Well, and if the case is wrong, if Pittman and Pierce are able to go, they are going to need him. 6'3", over 6 foot for Alec Pierce, who has the leaping ability on top of that is just out of the gym. That's really important. But Mike Pittman's 6'4". Like, you can't afford to go small against these guys. I mean, they're not Mike Evans. I'm not trying to conflate them that much, but they are sizable, and I think that will be useful when it comes down to it. But that also, you have a lot of youth on the field. I think the rest of them are actually starting to come around. George Karlaftis, I think, is being pretty steady when you take a look at what he's been able to accomplish. He is tied with Aiden Hutchinson up in Detroit for the most pressures produced by a rookie out of these first 2 games. And that's pretty significant. I know he hasn't gotten home yet, but do you see evolution yet, or are we still waiting for him to kind of put it all together and maybe get an opportunity to hit the quarterback?
Yeah, I definitely see a progression, and and he came darn close to Herbert at the goal line on that play. That was another big moment, certainly in that sequence. That came before Chris Jones ended up forcing the fumble there and everything. That I do. I mean, I feel like Karlaftis is definitely coming along, and you do. I mean, I think the first sack is right around the corner because he just seems to be getting closer and closer each week. So far, I don't think there's a lot to dislike. I mean, hey, I know Karlaftis has been a pretty tough critic himself. He'll tell you the things that he thinks he's doing wrong and everything. But I see at the same time a lot of confidence in him. And I was definitely, after talking to him after the game on Thursday, same thing. I mean, he was pretty pumped up about that game. I think he felt like it was another good performance for the defense. And that's another thing with this defense. And I think it applies to Karlaftis, but also everybody else. The way this defense is playing, the confidence is spreading. I mean, it's the fact that they've been able to put up 2 really good performances back to back is huge for the psyche of this defense. Right now, I don't think that there's a lot of, there's certainly not any questions amongst this group right now. I mean, they feel like that they're playing as one unit. Everybody's responsible. Everybody's being held accountable for each other. I mean, it's all the cliches, but right now it's ringing true. And I think that kind of confidence is certainly going to spread down to the rookies, because if everybody's playing with that kind of confidence, the rookies are going to play with it too.
And they're going to actually reap the benefits of a team that I think is still in disarray. This loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars that the Colts sustained, scoring 0 points, that's going to allow them to have to tee off. I expect them to be playing from behind, and that pass rush is going to come into it. The Chiefs are going to have to deal with the Colts pass rush as well. Very different than last week. We'll talk about that as we get back on who you might want to lay some wood on here from BetOnline. When you need to get into the action, BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to check all your betting information for all your betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 source for all the odds, lines, games, and everything you need to get your money on the line in a smart way that gets you ready for whatever season you're looking for, whether it's this football season, could be baseball, NFL, NHL, NBA, even the golf and the combat sports are there at BetOnline. It continues to be the top resource for all of your sports wagering information, your live in-game betting, podcasts, scores, everything that you need to get covered. Head over there to BetOnline. It's easy to get to their website from any device, including your phone. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, where this game is going to start and end is up front. I want your impression, Matt, because I feel like the last ball game, Thursday night, against one of the premier pass rushing duos in the league, yes, there were problems. Yes, there was more pressure on Patrick that you want, but it was not a jailbreak. The tackles were under duress. We understand that from that particular opponent. How do you feel like Brown and Wiley are holding up at this point, and what can we look for them this coming game?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of ways you could look at it. I mean, certainly just look at the sacks totals, and the Chiefs aren't giving anything up there. I mean, that's a big part of it. I mean, they're not giving up the big negative plays that really change a game, so that's good. I mean, and I think you have to give some of the credit there to Mahomes too. I mean, he's been doing a good job of getting rid of the football, making the reads that he needs to, even when he hasn't had the time. So I think there's a little bit of credit for the lack of sacks to go along to everybody. But there's no doubt. I mean, with the adjustments that they made in the second half against the Chargers, they had to provide those guys with a little bit more help in order to have that second half comeback and, to give Mahomes a little bit more time. You got a guy like Orlando Brown. You'd like to be able to leave him on that island as much as you can. You know that there's going to be times that you're going to have to give Wiley some support, especially when you got two edge guys like the Chargers do. Now, the great thing is that for the Chiefs, you're not going to see many other duos as good as that. I mean, you might see some in your division, because there's some other good matchups inside the AFC West, but across the league, that's one of the better duos, as far as pure edge guys on both sides you're going to see. So I still need to see, I think that was a really good test, and honestly, the Chiefs can win, so I think they passed it. They're still giving up too many hits on Mahomes, even though it's not a huge quantity. It's the quality of hits that he's taking on occasion that has me concerned, because even though you look at the pure numbers, and honestly, the hits and the hurries don't look that bad, but if I'm the Chiefs, I don't want Mahomes hit at all, much less, with some of the really hard, hits that he's taken.
Agreed. That's a very good way to put it, the quality of the hits. And this is a different team that they're going to face in Indianapolis. Obviously, there's some carryover. A couple of guys that in that front office that have identified some things that they know the Chiefs pretty well. That doesn't necessarily mean that it stacks up, but I think the pressure comes a little bit more from DeForest Buckner's their best defensive lineman. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. So that falls on Trey Smith a lot of the time this ball game, and whether Creed can give him some help or not. But interesting outside rushers as well in Yannick Ngakoue, and then the young guy, Kwity Paye, didn't have the greatest game last week, those two. Clearly didn't get to the quarterback enough for Jacksonville to slow down. Do you think that this is a ball game where the matchup just may play better to the tackle's strengths in trying to keep Patrick clean?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to me to see if the Chiefs go with a game plan to try and slow those outside edge guys down from the very beginning, or if it's something that, again, they wait to make that adjustment to see if they're able to get home and if that is a problem. To me, I mean, yeah, I think this is a team that's better equipped to be able to provide some outside pressure than you've seen from the Chargers, even from the Cardinals too. So I'm intrigued to see how they match up with that. I mean, yes, the interior strength of the Chiefs offensive line should be there to be able to handle a guy like Buckner, but still, you're not going to ask a Trey Smith to do that one-on-one. I mean, you're going to have to give him some support, and that means that the tackles are going to have to do their job, because again, if you're accounting for Buckner on the inside, you can't be giving support to both the tackles. I mean, that's just math that doesn't work out. So one of those guys is going to have to win their matchups. I mean, Brown's the guy that you want to count on in that situation. So that's the guy to me to watch as far as, whether or not the Colts can get some pressure. But the one thing that the Chiefs can do to help out the most is run the football a little bit. I mean, if they can get that going, slow those guys down a little bit more, I think that's pretty key. And the Chiefs have made now through 2 games an effort to try and get the ball going on the ground earlier than I've ever seen them. I mean, I still think you're going to see the same kind of splits, but there's no doubt. I mean, Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, Nagy, I mean, even Mahomes, I think they want to try and get the ground game going early to try and open up the passing game.
And Andy made some comments to that, specifically about, hey, we're trying to run the ball a little bit more than we usually do. It doesn't really equate to that. I think it's still like a 26% play call. But just the fact that they're cognizant of it and that Andy Reid himself is saying, hey, we're going to do this, does that make it automatically more effective? Because I think that's the thing that stands out to me is when they do run, They seem to be getting at a better clip. They're playing with better angles on the offensive line, in my opinion. And clearly, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is running harder. Both he and McKinnon, I think, have been surprisingly spry so far. What's your read on, is it sustainable? And do they have to make that, like, is this just a first quarter thing, or do they have to make that a season-long parameter?
Well, with the majority of the defensive looks that we think that the Chiefs are going to get, the opportunities to run the football are absolutely there. And it's going to be on the offensive line to obviously do its job. And you got to think that in year two that the line's going to be a little bit more cohesive than it was last year. But two, you got to have the running backs healthy and able to do the job too. And that's the one thing that I think has been the difference with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is that I think we're seeing a guy that's finally running healthy for maybe the first time since those first few weeks of his rookie season, when, he really looked like he was going to be a big time rusher. We've seen him break off more big runs in these first two games than he has at any point really in the last, year and a half. Mm-hmm. So that's promising to me. I mean, there's a lot to like, and so much of the success of the Chiefs offensive line, or the Chiefs running game, is going to be on Clyde. I mean, I've got a lot of faith in the offensive line. It's just a matter of if Clyde can stay healthy and get the production. And so far through two games, he's done that. The question is just going to be, can he sustain it and build upon that? Because as good as he's been, I mean, I think he still needs to be better, and there should be more ceiling for him.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that this is where we start to see Sky Moore get peppered in a little bit more after the first two game kind of back-to-back game planning. How do you see this game going overall?
To me, I mean, the biggest part about this game is, when and if Matt Ryan shows up. And, because so far that's been the biggest problem for the Colts, is that Matt Ryan is not the guy that they thought that they were getting in a quarterback. I mean, he has really struggled protecting the football. Maybe some of that's been on the offensive line, but then again, I mean, the Colts have not been able to get the ground game going, but that's because I don't think defenses have given any respect whatsoever to the passing game. I mean, if you're going to crash in and try and stop Jonathan Taylor, which is the best strategy for attacking the Colts, then Matt Ryan is going to have to beat you. And Matt Ryan hasn't done that to anybody this year. So, hey, I'm one of those people that believes that 2 through 53, the Colts probably have one of the best rosters in the league. The one thing that's going to hold them back is the quarterback spot. And they're hoping that Ryan is just going to be good enough to get them through. And right now, he hasn't been that. So nobody, I think, in the league wants to be playing the Colts when they wake up. Question's going to be, when they figure it out and when they put it together. I think they'll do it at some point this season. This is not a 2-15, roster. I mean, that's better than that. They're not a team that you expect to get blown out by the Jaguars. So they should be better. You just don't want them to figure it out against you. So based on what we've seen, I mean, I still think that the Chiefs win this game comfortably. I mean, I think it's a double-digit game. I don't have anywhere near the confidence as far as I thought the Chiefs were going to beat the Chargers. But I mean, because you certainly see what happened around the league this week in week 2. I mean, this game should scare you. I mean, a big favorite on the road, that's the kind of teams that are going down right now. But I'm going to go with the Chiefs 31-17 because right now they're the better team and they're playing better.
I like it, folks. You heard it here first, 31-17. You're going to hear from Chris and I on Friday. Don't miss that show. Remember, we are 5 days a week. For those of you that are not subscribed yet, please hit the bell, hit the like and the sub on YouTube, and get on those audio platforms. Check out ChiefsDigest.com. That's where all Matt's work is. Matt, thank you for joining us from your secret undisclosed location. We appreciate the time.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Take care, everybody.
Folks, have a good one. We'll talk to you tomorrow.